My DIL is so uneducated, it's ridiculous. She apparently graduated from a university, but I've never even heard of that university. It must be a trashy university. Doh, how hilarious. Hearing that, I felt my blood boil. My Mill was gleefully speaking ill of me. But she would soon be shocked by a truth revealed by her beloved son. My name is Eleanor. I'm a homemaker living with my husband. He is kind and always tackles his work with a positive attitude. I adore him. We don't have a child yet, but I have no complaints about our life together. However, my relationship with his family, especially my Mill, wasn't so great. Whenever I met her, she would belittle me, which was distressing. Moreover, she would act sweetly in front of my Phil and husband, so no one believed she was bullying me. Especially annoying was when she would bring up education. She would always mention academic credentials. She herself graduated from a reputable college, and my husband graduated from the top university in the country, which she never failed to boast about. The first thing she asked me when I first visited my husband's home was about my highest level of education. My Mill greeted me with a smile at our first meeting. But as soon as my husband stepped away for a moment, she quickly asked me, "My son graduated from Harvard. He's brilliant, and I'm so proud. I went to Wellesley College myself. And where did you study?" Why would she ask about education when I was there to meet them for the first time? I answered honestly, puzzled. As soon as she heard the name of the university I graduated, her face contorted, and she looked at me with disdain. "I've never heard of that university. What kind of backwoods school is it? Oh, to think my son ended up with such a dud for a wife. Absolutely useless." What? I was shocked. She seemed to dislike the university I graduated, but why was she so harsh? I couldn't understand what she intended. Seeing me remain quiet, she seemed to get carried away and declared in a confident tone, "I agreed to let my son marry because he wanted to, but normally, someone with your low education wouldn't even be worthy of speaking to my son. From now on, make sure you devote yourself entirely to him." Eventually, I realized the misunderstanding and tried to correct it. However, just then, my husband returned, and the conversation was interrupted. Since that day, my Mill, thinking I was uneducated, harassed me daily. She would come over to our house and look around with an air of superiority. It's too late to do anything about your lack of education, but at least support your son as a housewife. Don't buy things for yourself, stop wandering around aimlessly, and devote everything to your son. I was taken aback by her words. It was as if I was a slave. I have my own life. I will do what I want and buy what I want freely. I spoke up clearly, but it didn't get through to my Mill, who was convinced she was right. Oh, how presumptuous of someone uneducated. No matter how much you think, it's futile for someone with a bad brain. Oh, you're so simple-minded, you can't even understand this simple thing. Saying this, she casually sat on our sofa and began to relax comfortably. Dealing with my Mill became so absurd that I started doing housework to avoid her. Yet, like a baby bird, she followed me around, nitpicking everything I did, from cleaning to laundry. For example, when she saw a robotic vacuum cleaner in our house, she said, "Oh, you don't know how to use a vacuum because you're uneducated." And while checking how I folded the laundry, she remarked, "Only someone with a bad brain would fold this way." She ridiculed everything I did. As days passed, my frustration grew. I believe it's my right to choose whether I use a robotic vacuum or a dust cloth, and even though my way of folding clothes might differ from hers, everything was neatly organized. Why did she have to criticize me so much? Yet, if I ever talked back, she would complain even louder, so I tried to ignore her as much as possible. However, one day, getting bolder, she chuckled and said, "It's sad for a child to have a mother with such a poor brain. My son is so educated, and it's a waste of good genes to be paired with an uneducated mother. Not even born yet, and she was already insulting my potential children, truly stressing me out. In just 6 months of marriage, I lost over 20 pounds. If she disliked me so much, I thought she shouldn't visit, but she seemed to think our house was part of her walking route, constantly dropping by. One day, seeing my shopping list, she burst out laughing again. "What's with this sloppy handwriting? You can't even write, can you?" She enjoyed calling me the DIL who contrite so much that she started spreading it among the relatives. Because of this, every time relatives gathered, I found myself the butt of their jokes. One day, we had a family memorial service at my in-laws' house, and I dreaded going. I knew my Mill would take the opportunity to bully me even during the preparations. As I was feeling down about attending, my husband suggested something. Because he noticed I looked unwell and wasn't familiar with the task since it was my first memorial service after getting married. So, he decided to help me with the preparations. I was happy with my husband's kindness. I was grateful not only for the help but also for noticing how gloomy I felt. Thus, I felt reassured on the day of the memorial service, but I was soon reminded that I had underestimated my Mill. She wouldn't miss a chance to boast about her son's education. On the day of the memorial service, as soon as my husband and I arrived, my Mill rushed over and, grabbing my husband's hand, tried to take him to the room where the relatives were gathering. My husband explained, "Today, I'm helping Eleanor," but my Mill strongly objected. "What are you saying? Leave the preparations to Eleanor. You should greet the relatives you haven't seen in a while." She likely wanted to show off her highly educated son to the relatives. Left alone, I had to prepare everything by myself. Struggling with unfamiliar tasks, my Mill suddenly showed up. I was briefly hopeful when my Mill showed up, thinking she might help. But she just gave me a cold look and said, "Even someone uneducated like you should be happy to be useful," and ordered me to serve coffee before quickly leaving. I carried coffee to the room, feeling like I wanted to go home. When I entered the room, my Mill was still bragging about her son. Today's highlight was a new car my in-laws had got. In fact, it was us who gifted the car when we heard my in-laws were planning to buy a new one. It was a luxury sedan, something my Mill had long desired. Because of this, especially my Mill had wanted to buy the car for a long time, but since it was quite expensive, she couldn't afford it. Knowing this, my husband and I had gifted it to them for their 60th birthdays. However, my Mill, perhaps thinking the new car was solely my husband's doing, was overjoyed and drove it around, showing it off to the neighbors. She wasn't going to miss a perfect opportunity to boast at a gathering like this. Once my husband went to join my Mill started boasting. "My son is so kind, he even bought us a car. He's such a dutiful son." The relatives, used to her bragging, did an object and simply responded, "What a wonderful son you have." Feeling good about the attention, my Mill took the opportunity to belittle me again. "Compared to my son, my DIL is so uneducated. She apparently graduated from a university, but I've never even heard of that university. It must be a trashy university." Oh, how hilarious. Hearing that, I felt my blood boil. Even the relatives listening responded with pitying remarks like, "Poor thing." Meanwhile, my Mill was looking smug, increasingly bad-mouthing me. Even if she's not smart, at least if she worked, she'd be endearing. But she tries to be lazy right away. It's hopeless. Even today, she's trying to dump her work on my son. It's such a hassle. I really need to keep an eye on her and retrain her. It seems she doesn't even want to have kids. Really, what did she marry into this family for? My son is so capable, earns a high salary, and is kind, but that good-for-nothing wife of his. While talking to the relatives, my Mill was grinning ear to ear. It seems she truly enjoys ridiculing me from the bottom of her heart. I took a deep breath to calm myself, and then served coffee to the relatives. Then, perhaps it wasn't fun for her since I didn't react, as my Mill then frowned and raised her voice even more. "Look at this, she's so unfriendly. She's too stupid to even know the words to offer coffee properly." Even the relatives were at a loss for words in front of the Mill belittling me so openly. But she didn't care about everyone's troubled mood, and kept talking. "It's probably a good thing she doesn't have children. I'd want my son's children, but the thought of mixing with Eleanor's low education genes, I wish he'd just divorce her quickly and remarry someone with a higher education. That would be more suitable for my son. I'm looking forward to having smart grandchildren." With that, my Mill burst into laughter. At the sound of her loud voice, I clenched my fists tightly. I had reached my limit. It was unbearable being ridiculed, but for her to casually plan my husband's remarriage was unthinkable. It was time to fight back thoroughly. I can't take it anymore. It was time to put into action the plan I had been preparing. I called my husband out into the hallway from the other room. I told him that I had been bullied by my mill. At first, he didn't believe me. That was to be expected. In front of him and my mill always played the good mother. So, I pulled out something. Then, will you listen to this? What I began playing was a recorder. I had been recording my mill's remarks. My husband had planned to be by my side, which I was grateful for. However, I had prepared another measure in case it didn't go well. In the quiet hallway, the sound of my mill ridiculing me echoed. My husband understood her true nature after only a little listening. He turned red and apologized to me, then approached my mill to tell her the truth. Mom, Eleanor isn't uneducated. She graduated from a famous university. You heard about it when we got married. But my mill looked puzzled. I've never even heard of that university. Oxford something. It must be one of those bottom-tier universities where you get in just by writing your name. Maybe you can graduate there by just paying money. Eleanor can't even write. Really, uneducated people are so useless. My husband was truly shocked by her response. What? You don't know University of Oxford? It's one of British top universities, right alongside Harvard. Oxford. She must have heard of it by now. Realizing she was outclassed in education, my mill's face turned pale. The relatives listening in were also gaping at me. My husband added, "Of course, Oxford is far more prestigious than the Harvard where I graduated. Only a few people who get accepted each year. It's a very elite university. Eleanor graduated from there." Yes, I had graduated from the famous Oxford, a university that continuously produces millionaires and Nobel laureates. I thought everyone knew about University of Oxford, so when I mentioned it at our wedding introduction, I didn't think much of it. However, my mill, not knowing University of Oxford, misunderstood it as a third-rate university and continued to mock me for being uneducated. I never thought someone who valued education so much would be unaware of such a globally recognized university, nor did I expect to be harassed to this extent because of it. Amid the relatives murmuring, my mill desperately tried to respond. The Phil and others entered the room, alerted by the commotion, but my mill, still red-faced and complaining, seemed oblivious to them. But Eleanor can't even write, can she? Since she's uneducated, she can't do anything right. She can't even write in English, so how could she possibly be smart? Mom, maybe what you saw was in French. Eleanor is more accustomed to French, so she writes her notes in French. Besides, do you not understand French? That's right. What my mill had referred to as sloppy handwriting was actually French cursive. I moved to France when I finished elementary school due to my parents' jobs, and had lived in French ever since, not using English much. Both the claims about my education and inability to write were misunderstandings by my mill. However, I never corrected her assumptions because I did not want to engage with someone who belittled me without understanding the situation. From the start, my mill judged people and wouldn't listen to reason. Even if I could have convinced her, it wouldn't feel rewarding after being belittled so much. Being praised just for my education at this point would seem trivial. I don't believe education is everything. My education in England taught me to embrace a broad range of knowledge and values, obtaining the ability to live that applies globally. This value is not solely determined by academic credentials. I didn't marry my husband because he graduated from Harvard. I respected his sincerity and leadership qualities. Clearly, my values and those of my mill, who judges people solely by their educational background, do not align. Yet, even after being utterly refuted, my mill continued to rattle on quickly. But Eleanor is just a housewife now. You support her so she can live comfortably, right? Honestly, you're too good for someone like her. You even bought me a car, my wonderful son. Then, my husband sighed deeply and revealed another truth. Actually, Mom, I said I bought the car, but it was possible because of Eleanor's savings. What? But Eleanor is a housewife, right? Her savings are thanks to your earnings. So, it's really your money. My mill was fuming, her nose wrinkled as she yelled, but my husband quietly shook his head. Yes, Eleanor is a housewife, but she trades stocks from home. She truly earned and saved the $50,000 herself that went towards the car. Yet, you've been harassing her, Mom. I was thankful for Eleanor's kindness in buying my parents a new car, but I'm disappointed in you. For real. My milk collapsed to the floor. Realizing that the DIL she ridiculed for being poor and uneducated was actually far more educated, and had even bought the car, not her son. And her son, whom she was so proud of, disliked her now. It was my Phil who spoke to my trembling Mill when she was at a loss for words. Until then, he had been silently listening, and quietly began to speak. "Don't you have something to say to Eleanor, Gah?" But my Mill groaned softly, unable to admit her wrongs, a task too great for her high pride. However, my Phil pressed on. "You said that uneducated people can't do anything. But now, you can't even apologize for her wrongdoing. Isn't you the one who really can't do anything?" With that, my Mill reluctantly raised her head, her face red with frustration, and apologized. "Eleanor, I'm sorry for everything." Then, my Phil added, "I'm sorry, Eleanor. I had no idea my wife was causing you such trouble. And to think we accepted a car from you. We should return the money, even if it means selling the car." At that, my Mill looked as if she might faint. She must really love that car. But I gently responded to my Phil. "It's all right. She always said these things when we were alone, so it's understandable that you didn't know. Also, please don't sell the car. It was a gift, and you don't need to return the money. Just please take good care of it." At my words, my Mill looked at me, moved, and said, "Thank you." I almost burst out laughing. Did she think I refused to accept repayment out of kindness? That wasn't the case at all. I gave the car hoping that if my Mill had a hobby she was passionate about, the harassment might lessen. Indeed, while she was out driving aimlessly, it was a relief that she wasn't coming to our house as often. However, it seems my Phil and Mill were sincerely thankful. "Eleanor, I'm truly sorry for everything. If I had kept a better eye on my wife, I wouldn't have troubled you, Eleanor. I'm sorry." My in-laws apologized to me in unison. Then, the relatives who were listening started apologizing to me one after another. "Sorry, Eleanor. We completely believed what your Mill said. Let's get along from now on. If you ever have any trouble, feel free to talk to us." While I was surrounded by relatives, my Mill was being lectured by my Phil and husband for a while. Seeing her downcast face, I finally felt a weight lift from my heart. After that, my Mill's bullying stopped abruptly. It seems she truly reflected on her actions. While I can't forgive what she did, she is still part of my important family. I hope we can build a good relationship.